I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Are you ready to win at the game of life? Well, throw out that rulebook and get down to the business of being the best and most authentic version of you. Welcome to the Human Design Podcast. We're changing the rules around success, abundance, purpose, love, and life, where we're creating a planet where everyone can thrive in a world that loves and supports each other. I'm your host, Emma Dunwoody, a qualified master coach, human design expert, podcaster, and entrepreneur that is living the life of my dreams, breaking all the rules while doing it, making a huge impact, and living my design and manifesting miracles on the daily. Join me as I break down and simplify everything you need to live in alignment with your human design, teach you how to recondition your unconscious mind for greatness, and to take back your power so you can manifest your heaven on earth and serve the rest of the planet at the same time. It's time to give up the fear and step into your highest potential, to reach for the stars, to know and live your greatness. It's what you deserve, and it's what the planet really needs from you. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hey, and welcome to today's episode. I am super excited to have you here. I feel like I say that every week. Well, thank you to my gate 16. I am a super enthusiastic human, and I do love being here with you. I want to say a super big thank you to everyone who always reaches out, says hi, tells me how much they love the interviews and what they get from the podcast. I just, it makes my heart sing. You know, I'm definitely here on the planet doing what I came here to do, and I'm super grateful for you. I'm super grateful that you're a part of this journey with me, and we're taking this human design thing mainstream, right? It's going to take over the world in the most beautiful way. Imagine that world. Imagine what it would be like with the majority of humans being authentically themselves, operating from love, doing the things that light them up, feeling supported in their business, feeling supported in their life, you know, no longer hiding parts of themselves, like just, living their most authentic self. What a beautiful world, which I genuinely believe we are moving towards in the new paradigm. And, you know, this podcast is how I'm specifically, or one of the ways I'm contributing to that new paradigm, to that new world. So thank you. Today, I want to talk about what I think is the next step in creating success in your business with aligning to your design. And I'm being a little bit hesitant because it's actually interesting. Like, the way I was trained was when I first did my certification a long time ago. I didn't even learn type until the end, because type can be really confusing, and because it can be not confusing, misleading. That's a better word. Because we put people into these buckets, if you like, of type. But it's actually our definition. And our definition decides what type we are. You know, if you've got a motor to the throat, then you're a manifester. If you've got a defined sacral, then you're a generator. If you've got a motor to the throat and a defined sacral, then you're a manifesting generator. If you have no sacral and no motor to the throat, you're a projector. And if you are a reflector, you're completely undefined. So it's actually the definition. So what's lit up in our chart and what's white in our chart when we look at the centers, that defines our energy. Now, yes, Ra did come up with these. Well, he came up with 4, and then the manifesting generator is the 5th type that people talk about. Technically, it's a hybrid of the generator. But the point being that this was sort of created to teach people. And what I learned, and I'm grateful for this right at the beginning, was to be more aware of how our centers work from a defined and an undefined perspective, versus getting too stuck in the type memes, okay? Because a projector, let's say, that has a defined root center, in my experience, and they could have the will center, they could have the solar plexus as well, is very, very different to what I would call a non-energy projector. So a projector that has a defined motor, very, very different to a projector that doesn't. Okay, like they're energy wise. So it's all well and good to sort of bundle them all in together, but it's just not that simple. So today I want to specifically talk about definition. We're talking about the centers, and we're talking about the difference between defined and undefined and how that plays out in the 3 phases of business. So you ready? Great. Let's dive in. So the first thing that I want you to understand is that your definition, and when I say definition, it's the centers that are colored in. These are your innate energies. Okay, we're taught in the original knowledge, this is consistent and reliable energy. And when asking myself, like, what does that specifically mean? These are the energies that are innate in you, that they're always there. They're always showing up for you, whether you acknowledge or fully step into them or not, they're always showing up for you. So let me give you an example. I'll obviously use my chart. I've got a defined throat, a defined sacral, a defined solar plexus, and a defined will center. So for me, work has always been a big player. As an adult, it's like been one of my number one focal points, always. Defined sacral. I learnt very young that when I speak, people listen, which is why when I was really young, I didn't say much at all. Defined throat. I also know that I've been very good with not only my emotions at my best, but I'm really great at holding space for other people's emotions. Always have been. Defined solar plexus. And then defined will center, for me, I am very determined. I have always been very determined, and I want what I want. I remember my dad saying when I was young, like, God, Emma, you have such expensive taste. And I was like, really? Do I? I do. He was right. And even building my self-worth back from the lowest low of depression and panic disorder, there were things even in my deepest, darkest times that I kind of knew that I was good at. So it was like I was always had some sense of worth, even though it was minimal. So in our defined centers, these are going to be the things that you kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of always been there, you know. Maybe you're really, you're a good thinker, you know, head, ajna. It's all about the mental energy, cerebral. That doesn't mean intelligent, doesn't mean that you're getting straight A's. It just means that you're like, yeah, yep, my thinking is definitely a superpower. Or I find it easy to, well, not easy, but it's more effortless for me to think my way through things. Maybe you have a defined G center. So having access to your higher self, even more though, it's that innate direction, you know, like that innate direction and lovability. It's just, you know what, if you're really honest with yourself, it's always there. Even though you don't necessarily articulate it, even though you've got conditioning around it, it's kind of always there. Same goes for the, you know, the root center, productivity, you know, like, yep, I can just get stuff done. It just happens. And then the spleen. The spleen is, it's like fear and well-being. So maybe if you've got a defined spleen, you've noticed that when you're afraid of something, if you just face that fear, it kind of just, it's done and dusted. You can move on. So these are the innate energies. And if you want to go deeper, you can go to my episode 95, which is all about deconditioning all the centers. So you can dive a bit further into centers. Obviously, we have panels on this. We have so much information on centers in HDX if you want to learn more. So what about our undefined centers? Well, our undefined centers are the places in our life, or the energies in our life, that we need to build the muscle. Okay, so let me give you an example. Again, I'm going to use my chart. So I'm undefined in the head and the ajna. Well, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that one of my earliest wounds was that I thought I was stupid. I was diagnosed with dyslexia very young, and in that diagnosis decided that I was stupid. I look back now, and as I've said many times, we actually now know that most dyslexics are also on the genius scale. We also know that there is nothing, because it was a learning disability when I was diagnosed. I don't think they would use those words now, but yes, that was what I was told, that I had a learning disability, or then it moved to a learning disorder. But the truth is there's nothing wrong with my brain. It just processes information differently to the education system. That's all. And many great thinkers are dyslexic. Now, what did that mean? With my undefined head and ajna, I built the muscle over time of being a great thinker. One of my greatest skills, I would say to this day, is I'm really good at asking questions and coming up with great questions. Now, that wasn't something that was innate in me. In fact, I was terrified of asking questions, and I was really afraid of asking stupid questions, because honestly, I'd ask some questions and the look on people's faces, like, being a highly sensitive person, I did not miss that people thought I was stupid for asking the questions that I was asking. So I have built a muscle, and now I'm really good at it. Now I'm really good at asking questions. I'm really good at finding the answers. I'm, an intelligent human, but it's a muscle that I've built. And the same goes for my spleen. Fear. I had low-grade fear my entire childhood, whether I was at school, whether I was, riding. And I rode horses and evented at very, very senior levels, that you'd think on the outside that how could I have any fear? Like, why would I do it if I was afraid of it? Because it's not the sort of sport for the faint-hearted. But it was just something that was just always sat there. So from the longest time, I learned to feel the fear and do it anyway. And over my years, it's now become one of my greatest skills. Like, I can differentiate the energetic, almost like the energetic marker within my body of direction from source and a fear thought. Like, I can feel the frequency of the two of them and which one to listen to and which one not to listen to. I'm also a person that if I'm afraid, and it's correct for me, I'm just doing it. Like, I don't hesitate. And in fact, in Mexico, I did very rarely hesitate. We were at one of these incredible cenotes, and there was this big platform that you could jump off into this crystal water. And it was all of my worst fears. There was so many people around watching. I was up the top. I'm very good at going first, and I'm very good at doing things that, when I'm afraid, I should say, doing things quickly, like I'll just get it done. But for some reason this day, other people went first. I hesitated, and it took me ages to jump off it. But I was never going to give up, because at the end of the day, I've learned just to keep moving through fear. It's one of my greatest skills. Undefined spleen. Another thing that I'm really good at, that I bang on about, what is that? Root center, baby. I've got an undefined root center. I grew up thinking I was lazy. Grew up thinking I was, had no motivation, which, if you know me, like, no motivation and laziness are two things that are not me. But one of my great habits, one of the skills that I've built over the years, and it's since 2015, when I first signed up to become a coach, to learn how to become a master coach. They said really early on, you got to be coachable and you got to take action. So I just did it. I just freaking did it. So it's now, I'd say, it's a skill that I'm really proud of. And my G center, well, love and direction, baby. Like, these are the things that, and it's really interesting. Now I'm saying this out loud, and this is a really honest moment, people. This would be the one that I'm still working on. If I feel into all of my centers, I'm really proud of my definition, and it's been there. So there's this feeling of like, yep, I'm good at it. I can trust it. My undefined centers, I'm like, I feel almost like pride, because they weren't easy. Productivity, overcoming fear, intellect for me, that wasn't easy. They were like habits that I built. I just kept showing up. And if I'm really honest, I feel like I'm still learning, especially when it comes to love. Really honest moment. Direction, I feel like I've got the direction piece, but all of these undefined centers, I can palpably feel that I've put a lot of effort into building those things. So our undefined centers are also this place where we build great skills, and we often, well, as the saying goes, we teach what we have to learn. So this is a place that we're going to end up teaching. So let's talk about the frame of business: startup, then growth, and then scale. So depending on your undefined centers, in startup, the first thing you've got to do is clear that shit up, because our undefined centers are where we've taken on the most conditioning. We can be conditioned in all of our centers, but this is where we've kind of like taken it up like a sponge, and it's become a part of our identity. And it's going to be the areas that we most need to work on. As I said, these are the areas for me, like fear. When I first signed up to start my training, look at me just checking my memory to be correct. Yes, I was still afraid of public speaking. The only place that I wasn't was when I was coaching equestrian sport, which I suppose is public speaking. Like I could teach a group anywhere from 1 person to 30 people, or I could talk about anything. Like that didn't bother me. But everywhere else, I was still afraid of public speaking. But it came really quickly because I have a defined throat. Now, so in the beginning, what you want to be conscious of is in your undefined centers, you need to clean that stuff up. So again, go to episode 95. It'll dive into each center, because this is the place where you're going to take in and amplify other people's energy, right? So in startup, you need to clear out all the stuff, because these are the centers that are helping you feel your way through, people, clients potentially, what's going on in the external reality. So it's really important that you, and potentially this is where your trauma sits and your unresourceful belief systems sit, all of those things. So in startup phase, the biggest focus is to clear all that stuff out. If in your defined centers, no, sorry, that's the other thing I wanted to say. Sorry, I knew there was something else. The other thing with your undefined centers, this is where in startup phase, you have to really consciously be willing to build the muscle. So if you have an undefined spleen, you're going to feel the fear. You really are. And even when you move through it the first time, there's going to be another time, and there might even be another time. So really getting used to feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Like if you are in startup and you're a non-sacral being, so a manifestor, a projector, or a reflector, then this is a really important place for you, because you're going to have to build the muscle for what consistent work looks and feels like for you. So this will be the place where later on down the track, you'll feel really like, wow, I did this and I did it my way. But in the beginning, you've got to be super conscious that, well, at startup, you're taking a lot of action. You're doing a lot of things. It's the hardest part of business, right? This is where most people fail. So it's finding that balance between, oh my goodness, I don't have energy for this. And well, this is the habit I need to build here. This is the framework I need to build here. This is how much I can do. This is how much I can't do, and building boundaries around it. It's going to be a big player. So really being aware of building that mindset and habits early on with your undefined centers. Now, with your defined centers, I think one of the big things to say here, especially at startup, is for goodness sake, stop telling everyone about all the shadows that you're embodying in your defined centers, and own that these are your superpowers. You still need to go to episode 95 and clean up the conditioning in the defined centers. But you actually got to own that these are the things that you are innately good at. Like if you have a defined throat, you're good at speaking. If you have a defined G center, you freaking do know which direction you're going in, and you're probably there to help your clients find the direction they're going in. Just because your ego doesn't have clarity doesn't mean you don't have direction. They're two very, very different things. So in our definition, we have to own it. We have to own that, yep, this is something that I'm building the muscle on trusting. I'm building the muscle on embodying. And it's already there. I don't have to do anything. It's already there. When we get to growth, this is where you'd want to see in your undefined centers consistent habits. Consistent habits of, let's say you've got an undefined solar plexus. I haven't talked about that yet. So by this stage, by growth, you have really solid boundaries around experiencing other people's emotions. What does that mean? Well, if you're a non-emotional being, maybe you have a coaching business and you have children. So you have, at the growth phase, one of the habits you've created is, let's say, a 20-minute buffer. Don't know where this is coming from. A 20-minute buffer between kids and work. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's taking the dogs for a walk, where you can completely let go of those emotions of being a parent and of the kid's emotions or your partner's emotions, whatever it might be. Cleanse, reset, and then turn up in your business. Like, this is the place where when your mum calls in the middle of a work day, you're like, oh, I'll call her back, because you know it's going to be an emotional conversation. It's where you have solid boundaries. You've built the muscle. Okay. With your defined centers, there's no more pussyfooting around. Like, you've chosen at the growth phase, you trust this energy within you. Okay. So if you have a defined head and ajna, or defined ajna, then you trust your thinking. You trust that the work you're here in the world to do has got a lot to do with your thinking. So you don't hold back. You actually share your thinking in the world, and you do it via your strategy and authority. You actually identify with being a good thinker. You don't have to think like everybody else. You don't have to think the way that you've been taught to think at school, but you own that, yep, look, this is one of my skills and I'm here to give it to the world. And then when we get to scale, this is where being in ease and flow shows up with your definition, okay? Because I know for me, I trust what comes out of my mouth now. I don't second guess it. I don't judge myself if I want, to spend money on clothes, because that's my defined will center. When I'm in an emotional low, like, I don't even consider these things anymore. It's just like, yep, that's part of who I am. I don't think about it. I be it. I'm authentic. Like, if you get me on a down day, and I don't know, we go and have coffee, the odds of me crying are good. Like, I'm not going to hold that stuff back. It's part of who I am. I'm also going to walk into any room and be able to hold space for whatever emotions, whatever story, whatever's been told. Yep, because it's one of my superpowers, peeps, and I know it. And ultimately, with your undefined centers, by the time you're at scale, you are just evolving. Like, what else is possible in here? What else is possible, for me, with fear? What else is possible with productivity? What else is possible with these things? Like, you're almost like what else can I do in this energy? Because and you feel this palpable. I know pride often gets a bad rap, and maybe there's a better word if I had Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness in front of me, but it's that, like, wow, I did that. Our undefined centers, when we build those muscles and we build those strengths, like wow, I did that. Like, I overcame challenge and adversity. I overcame my conditioning and shadow. I integrated those two things, but I learned to be this version of me instead of letting other people's energy dictate who I am. Like, by the time we get to scale, we are all over it, and we're grateful for it, and our self-worth has been built in those places. All right. Well, that's it for centers today. If you want to learn more, you know where to go. HDX, we have all of this in great depth, and I'm teaching business. Everything you're hearing on the podcast is just the tiniest tip of the iceberg of everything I'm teaching in HDX. So if it sounds fun, come join, come check it out. And I want to say thank you so much for being here with me today. I trust you got what you needed from today's episode, and I look forward to having you on the next one. Bye for now. Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.